There goes a fly ball towards left field. Going back fast is Kennedy. Kennedy gets there, and he takes it. And the Cleveland Indians are the world champions of 1948. And
this is Cleveland's Team, a baseball history podcast. A regular look back at professional baseball in Cleveland from 1901 and beyond. Now, here's your host, Guardians team historian, Jeremy Fedor.
Try to focus a lot on your Cleveland time in the grand scheme of your career. It's not a,
not a lot of time here.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah. I'm not saying.
Is this a mic?
Yeah, that's a mic.
Okay.
Nice to double check everything's recording. So, let's go back to the beginning. And
sure.
For you, when did it become apparent that baseball was going to be something for you? That it was going to be a career?
Well, you always think as a kid that you're going to be a major league player. That's the number one thought that I was thinking of all the time when I started playing baseball at 13, 14 years old. And I did well my sophomore year in high school, junior and senior year. I didn't play my freshman year. My mom wouldn't let me play because of my grades. She said, if you don't have a B to an A in each class, you're not going to play. So I didn't play that first year. But after that, the love of the game made me really focus on my school, and I took care of that. But when I was a junior, I think that's when it really started hitting me that, hey, you might be pretty good. You might have a chance to play at the collegiate level. I wasn't thinking pro ball at that time. The pro ball thing popped in my senior year when scouts started coming to the games. And that's when I was like, okay, well, maybe I am good enough. But that's when, it really took shape. And
you mentioned your mom briefly. Was she a big influence then on your growing up in your life and getting into baseball?
Yeah, I mean, she was the reason why I got into baseball because we had just moved into this particular neighborhood, and I knew no one. And I was pretty much a homebody because it was summertime, and it was in Texas. It's pretty hot in the summer. You don't really do very much. But then there was a baseball team practicing maybe 2 blocks down the street, and she said, "Why don't you go try out for that team?" And I said, "Mom, you just can't go try out for a team." And she says, "Let's go down there and see." So we went down there, and the coach said, "My team is full, but I can tell you go to the community center, it was called Forest Hill Community Center. And you can sign up, and whichever team needs a player, they'll contact you." And what team contacted me? The Indians, of all teams, yeah. That was the first team that I played for in Pony League, and the rest is history.
And you get drafted by the Red Sox. I mean, I always like talking to guys that were drafted in the 80s because things are so much different now than they were then. There was no 2-hour TV special. How did you get that news? Did you know the Red Sox were interested?
Yeah. I go from high school, scouts come into the game, and then I didn't get drafted at all, to going to a junior college my freshman year in college and getting drafted in the first round. And you wonder how you can go from not getting drafted off to getting drafted at high. But I guess I matured a lot as well. I got a lot better. And but when the Red Sox were scouting me, the scout came and took me out to dinner a couple of times, and he was telling me, we're thinking about taking you in the draft. I don't know where we're going to take you, but we're gonna give it a shot. And I was like, all right, great, this and that. So and once I got drafted by them, you didn't have the big hoopla as far as, Major League MLB Network or television. Of course, the news, they had a little clip on, me getting drafted and this and that because a local kid or whatnot. But it was still fun. It was one of those things where they called me the day of the draft after I got drafted because I didn't know at that time. They said, we've taken you in the first round, the 19th pick. And I was like, whoa. And it was the Red Sox. And I immediately called family members and everyone and let them know that I had gotten drafted and I was going to be going out somewhere. I didn't know where I was going to be going, but yeah.
Had you ever been to Boston in general before this? Or I mean, and then did the Red Sox fly you out there? Like nowadays, you keep seeing how we were out in Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh had their first draft pick out there. Is that the same back in the 80s? Or?
No. They called me. I talked to not only my scout, but it was someone in the front office. It wasn't the general manager, but I think it was one of the head scouting directors. And they congratulated me on being selected by them. And they said, we don't know exactly where we're going to send you yet, but more than likely it'll be short season because I was so young. I was only 18 years old. And they sent me to short season, and that was in Elmira, New York. So the first thing I thought, they're shipping me to New York, I didn't think Elmira, New York. They just said New York. So, but when I got to Elmira, it was a nice little town, college town, right next to Ithaca, New York. So yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Being you said 18. I mean, that's pretty young. Was it hard to maintain focus on, if I don't get into the majors next year, get frustration and things like that setting in, or were you were they pretty upfront with you on a timetable? Or
I gave myself a timetable. I told my dad, if I'm not in the big leagues at age 23, that gives me 5 years. I'm gonna probably do something else. I had, that was just arrogance, cockiness, I guess, because you want to play this game as long as you can, and you don't want to put a timetable on anything. But it was just something I knew that if given a chance, I could make it. And they gave me that opportunity, so I put everything on the table and just said, whatever it takes, I'm going to do it.
And you get called up in May of '87.
Mm-hmm.
What do you remember? Your managers taking you in the office and tell you to pack your bags, or what was that like?
Well, let me just tell you a quick story about my my A-ball manager when I got to that Elmira team. My mother, when I left there, she didn't go with me, or my dad didn't go with me. I went solo, and they said, it's always about the first impression. So I want you to wear the suit and tie. And I said, Mom, it's summertime, it's suit and tie. She's like, no, I'm telling you, it's going to make the right impression. I said, all right. So I wore the suit and tie. They had someone to pick me up at the airport, took me to Dunn Field where they played, and I walked into Dick Berardino's office, who was the manager, and I said, hi, Coach, my name is Ellis Burks. He says, I'm not your coach, I'm the manager. Skip Dick Berardino. I said, okay, it's manager. So he says, I just want to tell you something. You've made an impression on me already, son. I said, how's that? He says, you're the first kid to ever come to my office with a suit and tie. I said, my mom said the same thing. So that was funny, though. But in the big leagues, I tell you what, man, it was when I was in AAA, Pawtucket, Rhode Island. We had an off day. And Ben Mondorf, who was the owner and the general manager of the Pawtucket Red Sox, left a note on my door. I was out at Blockbuster Video picking out some videos because, we had the day off. I was going to watch videos that night. I get back. There was a note on my door. Ellis, give me a call as soon as you can. So I called him up, and he says, I got some good news and some bad news. I'm like, oh, boy, here we go. I didn't know what to expect. I'm hitting about 250. It was only 10 games in. So I said, give me the good news first. He says, the good news is you just got called up to play with the Boston Red Sox. And I was like, what? Are you serious? He says, yes, sir. And I said, well, I don't give a damn about the bad news, but what is it? He says, the bad news, you have to be on a flight in 2 hours. So I ended up, I didn't know what to pack, so I just threw all kinds of stuff in a bag. And I flew from Providence, Rhode Island to Seattle, Washington, all-night flight. Got to the ballpark. He didn't want to play me that day. He says, John McNamara was the manager. He says, just soak it in, enjoy where you are right now, and just, mingle with some of these guys that you met in spring training. So I sat there and I just saying to myself, oh my goodness, I'm in the big leagues. And I'm watching these guys hit against these pitchers that I've seen on TV or whatever. And it was just, I was starstruck. So the next day, I made my debut.
And You got your first hit May 1st against California. Do you remember your first hit in the majors?
Yeah, it was a double down the right field line.
Do you still have that ball? Or were you able
Yes.
to? How about a nice mantle place? Now, do you
I
remember
do.
your first home run about a week later?
Against the Angels as well, I believe. Don
Yep.
Sutton.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the things you mentioned too is being starstruck. When did you ever get over that pinch me moment? I mean, Don Sutton on the mound, and you're standing there in the batter's box. I mean, I imagine there were more guys as you came through that you probably remember watching. Was that did it ever stop being surreal? I mean, it has to if you want to perform well. But
Yeah, I think one of the surreal moments was I was in center field in Anaheim Stadium, that same series where I got my hit. And the wave was a really big thing back then. And at that time, it was like 45, 50,000 fans at that stadium. It was packed. And everyone was doing the wave. And I got caught up in looking at the wave going around, and whoever was hitting hit a bullet in the right center field gap. And I'm still looking at the wave, and the ball's in the gap. And I look around, and everyone's looking, and I take off running. I had no chance of catching that ball. But it was going to be a double anyway. We tried to keep him from getting a triple. But, yeah, that was one of those moments where I just got caught up in the moment, saying I'm in the big leagues, and I'm looking at the wave go around, and yeah, that was quite mesmerizing at that moment.
And with those Boston teams, who did you kind of fall in with right away? Was there guys that took you under your wing, or who was that?
Jim Rice was the first guy that I really met and kind of wanted to emulate and be like him in spring training, because I used to bat like him when I was in the minor leagues, because he just made that impression on me when watching him play. So when I got an opportunity to go to spring training camp with him, he told the clubhouse manager, put his locker next to mine. I want him to be next to me. And for a lot of different reasons, First of all, I was an outfielder. We both played outfield. We both were first-round picks by the Red Sox. And then, we both were black players that, didn't really get an opportunity to do that kind of stuff back in Boston. This is Boston, and not too long before that, they were having, racial issues. So I learned a lot from Jim Rice. I learned how to be a professional on and off the field from him. And, I got to work with him 2 years ago in Boston as well. But he was one of those guys that knew there was some potential with me, that I could possibly be the heir apparent to him. So he wanted to make sure that I was right. And I tell you what, he did a good job, and we worked together not only on the field but off the field. And he's really a good friend of mine today. I still call him all the time.
You mentioned, and I had a good conversation with Chris Chambliss back a few months ago, and when he won Rookie of the Year, I mean, there was a lot more black players in the league than there are now. I mean, the numbers kind of staggeringly dipped down. It sounds like something you were cognizant of when you were playing as well. And growing up, did you have look for players that were black watching? I don't know how much TV baseball was broadcast back then, but here we talk about Larry Doby and Satchel Paige a lot.
Yeah.
Were you aware of those guys at all? I mean, that's before your time, but
yeah.
And their importance to the game, and obviously Jackie as well. But,
yeah.
Was that something that you kept in mind?
Yeah, my dad was a big Jackie Robinson fan. He's the one that told me about Jackie Robinson. He's the one that instilled all of that in me. When you go to Boston, this is, you have to carry yourself well on and off the field, this and that. So I was already well prepared, well trained to go to Boston and be a successful ball player. Never got in any trouble, always spoke, well with the media. And I think that's why, the media kind of fell in love with me there, because if I had a great game, I was right there in front of the mic. If I had a terrible game, if I had made a terrible play, I was still right there in front of the mic, ready to just talk about it. Because I knew in this game there's failures throughout, offensively and defensively in this game. It's how you deal with the failures that make you a great ball player. So, me being, learning that and knowing that, it helped me a lot.
And eventually you make your way to Chicago in '93. Chicago. What I find fascinating about that is that was the very last series that Cleveland had at Municipal Stadium, all the pageantry. Do you remember much of that as a visiting player, everything going on? You got to play, I think, in those last few games at Municipal Stadium, a crowd full of, it was like 60, 70,000 fans. Is that anything that stuck out to you about that? Or do you remember much of it, or was it just visiting?
Yeah, I really didn't know a lot of the history of Municipal Stadium. I didn't know if they were, going to continue to play there, build a new stadium. That was something that I really didn't know about, playing in Cleveland. But, one thing about it, I did know that they had a lot of great players. They just didn't have a lot of outstanding pitching at the time. But the hitters, they had some guys that could really hit the ball. And I learned that the first series that we played in Cleveland. But, it's just a lot of history here, a lot of history in Boston. I played on some great teams that had a lot of history. San Francisco, Chicago, Boston. It's just been one of those whirlwind type careers of mine that I've been around some great people and great organizations.
Is that a thing that you didn't think about as a player, but now you can reflect back on? I mean, obviously, you got to play with Frank Thomas. I mean, guys like that. And as a 22, 23, 24-year-old kid, you probably weren't, thinking too much about the history of it all. But I guess now, maybe as an older guy, you think about, holy smokes, like that's pretty wild.
It's funny you say that because I was in Boston. My rookie season, I was 22 years old. And I'm the starting center fielder. To my right in left field, there was Jim Rice. To my left in right field was Dwight Evans. You had Roger Clemens, Wade Boggs, there was Bill Buckner, Don Baylor. There were so many great players on that team, and they were looking at me as not a rookie, but a key member of the success that they were going to have in that organization. And I took that as, usually back in the day they used to have the little hazing. I wouldn't call it hazing. It was just something where they dressed the rookies up a certain way, and you go through the airport because, they didn't have the private planes at that time. You had to go through the airport. And these guys would walk through the airports in their little tutus or whatnot, but they never, ever did that to me. They was like, no, don't do Ellis like that, because they knew it would affect the younger players that were up there, and it embarrassed them and this and that, and they didn't want none of that stuff to bother me, and I never got treated that way. So for me, I think it was just a matter of they respected me as well as I respected all of them, and that really helped me out, mentally, because I was like, I'm a part of this. I'm not just a rookie, first-year player that's just trying to make it. I'm here contributing to this organization, which was outstanding to me.
And, you got your start out in Fenway. And what was it? You got to play in a lot of, actually, ballparks that no longer exist. What was it like to play in Fenway in a sold-out house? Or what was it like to go to Old Yankee Stadium or Detroit? Or any, unique memories of playing in those places?
Yeah, of course, in Fenway Park, it's still there, of course, and they've upgraded so many things about it to modernize it. But yeah, just to play in that park where you had Ted Williams play, and Yaz play there, Jim Rice, all these Hall of Famers that had been there and played the game and played it the right way. Then, of course, you go leave Boston, you go play the Detroit Tigers in old Tiger Stadium, and you go out there and you look at the different tiers at that stadium. Man, it was something to really look at. And I would always get to the ballparks early, especially my rookie year when I'd never been to a place before. I'd get to that ballpark early just to kind of walk around and kind of look at it and just absorb all of this before I actually go play. And, I don't know if that was a psychological advantage on my part, but I just thought it was something that, okay, I'm going to get all the butterflies out right now. Just walk around, talk to people, the grounds crew or whoever. I would always do that. And I think that's how I really got to know a lot of different people. Like, it just wasn't baseball players or front office people I talked to and knew. I talked to everyone at the stadium because everyone has a story, so I wanted to hear it.
You mentioned a few of those names. Did you ever meet Ted Williams or those?
Yes. I got a great story about Ted Williams. I'm in A-ball, and Ted Williams used to walk around to watch the minor league players hit, and just to kind of get an idea of what kind of players are, if he could see the potential in this particular guy. So I'm hitting. I'm in this group hitting, and here comes Ted Williams. He gets behind him. Let me take a look at these guys. That's exactly what he said. And I'm coming up, I'm like, oh my God, Ted Williams watching. So I really lock in, and I'm cranking the ball, just slapping home runs to left field, center field, balls off the wall in right field. So Ted Williams says, who the hell is this guy? And I heard somebody say, oh, that's Ellis Burks. He was our #1 pick a couple years ago, last year. He says, I like this kid. So I came around again in the second round. And after I hit the second round, he pulls me over to the side. He said, come here, kid. He says, do you have an agent? I said, no, sir. I want to be your agent. Just jokingly. But I took that serious. I went, after we finished that day that we had a game or whatnot, I called my mom and dad. I said, Ted Williams said he wants to be my agent. So I tell my parents that. So the next day I'm coming to the ballpark floating. I'm like walking around in the locker room with the other minor league kids. And John Marzano, he was a catcher with the Red Sox as well. I said, man, did you hear Ted Williams said he wants to be my agent? John Marzano burst my bubble. He says, he tells everybody that. That's all, man. But that was fun, though. It was one of those things where you meet an icon like Ted Williams, and he's just standing there watching. Of course, you want to do something. You don't want to overdo it, because you can really mess things up if you really try to hit home runs. But I was just trying to hit the ball hard, and it worked out.
You make your first All-Star game in Boston and win Gold Glove and Silver Slugger. What was that season like for you? I mean, to be selected to an All-Star game, how did that make you feel? I mean, I obviously made you feel good, but what was thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, that was one of those things, as a player, you want to be an All-Star. You want to make the All-Star team. You want to, win those Silver Sluggers, those individual awards, but you also want to win a World Series. Mm-hmm. And the year before my debut was 1987. The year before, they got beat in the World Series by the Mets and didn't make it back until 2004. So that was something you can't take for granted. You play this game to win. You play this game to not only, you're building, all kinds of, your self-esteem. You're building up an organization. You're doing this. The fans love you. But ideally, you want to win. And we never did. We came close a few times. Oakland beat us and won the World Series in 88 and 90. But we never could get over that hump. But, I mean, that is something that, you try to do. And that's one of the reasons why I came back to Boston in 2004. I re-signed with the Red Sox for less money to go back there because I thought we had a chance to win. And we did. That was crazy. Yeah.
And so you go from, two storied franchises, old Boston, Chicago, to Colorado. Was that a culture change? I mean, was that, obviously expansion team and, not historic ballpark by any measure. And what was it like during your time in Colorado?
Well, I was a free agent, and the Chicago White Sox offered me a 2-year deal. And with my injury history, I wanted more security. I wanted a little more security. So I asked them, can you come to 3 years? You come with 3 years just to match their deal. I'm not asking for more money, just to match their deal. I'd love to stay here. And they didn't want to do that. And I just said, it forced my hand. I wanted to look out not only for my family, but I wanted to look out for myself and just do the best thing for me at that time. So I signed with the Colorado Rockies, which was a new franchise. They had played in 93. So I'm going to them the first year in 94. And they're still in the process of building Coors Field, so we had to play at Mile High Stadium. A little different, playing at an old football stadium. But, it was one of those things where, they put a team there. Other teams come there to play there, but yet they want to criticize the players when they do well there. And I said, you can't have it both ways. Okay, other teams are coming in throwing up good numbers there, but when our players play well and do well, there's an asterisk beside their names. But they were playing in Coors Field. I didn't like that at all. So I made it a point not only to hit well in Coors Field, but I wanted to do the same thing on the road. And if you look at my splits, that showed. But that was just one of those things where you just have to play where you play. And then I had fun there. Great people I met there. I lived there for 14 years. That was it's a great city. And I left that organization and went to another well-known organization, the San Francisco Giants.
And I think when we spoke a couple of years ago, you mentioned you got to know Willie Mays.
Yes.
And what's that like? I mean, to obviously, it's the greatest player in baseball history.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you, I don't know, what was that like?
Well, the first time I met Willie Mays, I had just gotten traded over, and I was in Chicago with the Rockies. I found out I had gotten traded, so they pulled me off the field. I met the team in Philadelphia. First day, I hit a home run in Philly. After that, I think I was 0 for 9, 0 for 10, something like that. So we get back to San Francisco, and Willie Mays is in the clubhouse, and I'm like, oh, snap, Willie Mays. So he says, hey, Ellis, come here, boy. So I go over there. He says, let me ask you something. Why do you think we got you over here? I said, you needed a center fielder? No, we got you over because you can play. He says, we needed help in center field. You can be that help. Don't try to do too much. Just be yourself. Just be that player that we saw when we went to Colorado and you played against us. You killed us. Be that player. And, when he said that to me, that kind of lifted the weight off my shoulders, because that's exactly what I wasn't doing, being myself, because I was trying to justify the trade. They trade away this guy for me, and I was trying to do too much. And I see that in a lot of players today when they sign big contracts, when they get traded over to a new team. They try to do something that, something different, something they're not. And when he said that to me, it lifted a lot off my shoulders. And I had a great game that night and afterwards. And but my best Willie Mays story, and I'm going to tell you this really quick. They brought back the greatest Giants of all time for this one game. You had Warren Marshall, Orlando Cepeda, Willie Mays, Willie McCovey. All these guys came back, and they went out to their positions that they played, and they didn't put Willie in center field. They had Willie on the side. Instead of Warren Marshall throwing out the first pitch, they had Willie throw out the first pitch. So I said, what are you still doing in here? I'm asking Willie, what are you still doing in here? He said, I'm going to throw out the first pitch. I said, what? He said, yeah, he's got this jersey on, his original jersey. I mean, it was that thick cotton cloth, wool-like material. I'm like, man, that is a nice jersey. I said, that's yours? He said, yeah, that's the jersey I wore. I said, holy cow. I said, I tell you what, you're going to bounce that freaking pitch. He said, what? I said, you're going to bounce it. I said, if you bounce that pitch. He said, no, I'm not going to bounce it. I said, if you bounce that pitch, sign that jersey for me. He said, I guarantee you I'm not. I said, well, if you bounce it, will you sign it? He said, yeah. Boom, he goes out there, and I knew as soon as he got out there, the crowd, he took his hat off. He's going around just acknowledging all the fans and the hoopla. Everyone was just on their feet for like 2 minutes giving him a standing O. I'm saying to myself, I'm looking up, he's going to bounce it. So what does he do? He tries to do the old Warren Marshall leg kick way up high and right into the ground. As soon as he did it, he put his head down and he looked over at me, and I was like, yeah. So I got that jersey. He signed it for me, as well as like 4 balls he signed for me, and I have it in my home. And I tell you what, that's one of my prized possessions. So that's the greatest story I want to tell about Willie Mays.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
And during this time with Colorado, with a little with San Francisco, Cleveland was the hottest thing in baseball, it seemed, at the time. Did you remember kind of keeping your eye, not, you had no connection to Cleveland at the time, but remember what they were doing,
Yeah.
thinking, oh my gosh, this team, I don't want to come across them, or what were your thoughts of everything going on in Cleveland?
Well, it was one year. I think it was 95 or what year was it? I think it was 95. They had they were 144.
95.
95. I was with the Colorado Rockies. And I'm like, holy cow, this team was raking. I mean, just scoring runs and up and down the roster. Everyone's hitting 300 with 20 to 30 homers. I'm like, man, don't anyone want to face those guys. And then you had the Montreal Expos doing the same thing. And I knew that was going to be the clash in the World Series. Everyone knew that was going to be the two teams that eventually meet up. And then they had the strike. Messed everything up. And you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what would have happened. But that team, they had some of probably the most feared lineup, from top to bottom. And they've been known for that from that point on up until the time I signed here with Cleveland in 2001. You still had sellouts every game. You had the runner, the guys that was going to knock in 7 runs a game, average 6 or 7 runs a game. You have maybe 2 stud pitchers, and then you have 3-4 starters, the rest of the way. We had, C.C. Sabathia, Charles Nagy, Chuck Finley, Dave Burba, and I can't think of who the 5th was. But that was solid.
Yeah.
We had a solid rotation. And we had the hitters, got Juan Gonzalez, Jim Thome, Alomar, Roberto, Omar Vizquel, Kenny Lofton, myself. You had some guys that could hit the ball. So we were pretty, not only happy to have those guys, we were confident. We're going to run through this. We're going to take them. So, and we did win that division and went on, and Seattle ended up beating us. That's the year they won 116 games. They beat us, but, it was just, we could have performed better, but I don't know what happened,
Did you get a sense when you were coming to Cleveland that it was the tail end of this era of, from 95 to 01, then I think we missed the playoffs for a few more years, but,
yeah,
guys were kind of on their way. I mean, Thome was soon gone.
Yeah,
And,
I didn't know. I did not when I signed here. I thought it was just going to continue. But whenever you get a different ownership, sometimes things can go another way, and that's when we started, figuring out, okay, instead of going out signing these big free agents like a New York Yankee team or Boston Red Sox team, let's kind of cultivate what we have in our minor league systems, or trade some of these guys off to bring some more prospects into the system. And I think that's what the Guardians and the Indians did back then.
And in 01, there were 2 pretty big games. One for you on June 19th. You had a 3 home run game. Do you remember much about that? Did the ball look like a beach ball at the time? It was just one of those days where everything felt great.
I remember that night against the Twins, I believe that was. And I don't think I did anything different. I didn't feel a certain way. But, when you're playing well and you're seeing the ball good, anything can happen. And when you're talking 3 or 4 home runs in a game, that's something that just, you don't expect it. I've done a couple of home runs a few times in a game. But
is that your only 3 home run game?
That was my only 3 home run game.
And you said anything can happen. August 5th, you got 2 at-bats. You guys were down by 12. You remember watching that comeback and just thinking, like,
yeah,
you can't be coming back?
Right. They took me out. Charlie Manuel, I believe it was, took me out the game because we were already down by 12 runs. And, it's, 5th, 6th inning already. So it wasn't like they were throwing in a white towel, but, you wanted to take some of the guys that had injury-prone careers prior. You want to take them out and kind of take care of them, get ready for the next day. So they took me out, put Hobart Cabrera in, took a couple of other guys out. So I go up in the clubhouse and I'm watching the game. I'm like, geez, you don't want these guys to score 20.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, you get a hit here, a hit there, a couple runs here, 3 more runs the next inning. By the 9th inning, it's like, holy cow, we got a shot here. And, it was against Seattle and came back and won that game. That was incredible comeback. That was one of those games you don't think you're ever going to come back from that deficit to win the game.
Was there a point in that game where you were kind of upset you were out? I mean,
Yeah. Yeah, but as a manager's job is to maintain the health of his team. And we came back and won the game. Mm-hmm. I was happy that we had won the game. I didn't have any kind of thoughts of, I should have been in there. No, it's just the guys that were put in did a better job at that time. Yeah.
And then, 2001, CC Sabathia. Did you know off the bat this kid had something special? I mean, what was it like to watch CC kind of develop and get him in the league?
You know what? He forced the Indians' hand at the time. He was only 19 years old. But the kid had just a blazing fastball, big sweeping breaking ball, and he knew how to pitch. He knew how to set the veteran guys up, strike them out, and just take control of the game. And I think he was 17-5 his rookie year, something like that. And you look at him in spring training. I saw the kid pitch in spring. I'm like, he's got something. He's going to be up sooner or later. That's what I thought. But he come out and he just helped us right away, and he proved that he was ready for that level. And I thought, 17-5, jeez, that was doing it. Did he get Rookie of the Year that year? No.
Ichiro.
That's right. This guy comes in and just tears up the league. Yeah.
Did you feel, when did you start feeling like the elder statesman of teams? Was that during your time in Colorado? You had several years under your belt. Or did you ever, is that something you embraced, or is that something you just kind of understand, hey, I'm still in the league, I'm here in my 30s, and that's my role?
Well, like I said, Boston really, and Jim Rice really taught me a lot about the game. So when I went to other teams, younger teams, like Colorado, I wanted to influence those guys. And we had veteran guys. You had Larry Walker over there. You had Dante Bichette, Andres Galarraga. But you didn't have a guy that was outspoken. And we would call meetings. I would call meetings and say, hey, we have to do this. We got to do this. Because the guys were hit like crazy at Coors Field. It just became a mental block. And then you go on the road, you're averaging 6-7 runs at home, and then you go on the road and average 2. What is it? And so we had a big talk about that. But it's always good not only to be that veteran player, but you be that veteran player that guys respect. And I was that guy. I was fortunate enough to have a good career where the numbers back that up. And guys, they look at numbers. They see what have you done? Because I got a little funny story. I was in Colorado as a assistant hitting coach in 2015, I believe it was. And it was this young kid, I can't think of his name, but he was, he played here in Cleveland for a little bit, Brandon Barnes.
Okay.
So we were doing some flips in the cage, and I'm telling him about, hitting, not opening up too quick, stay through the ball, drive it to right center, you got power that way. So after we finished up and everything, he says, did you play? I said, I got a cup of coffee, I got a little time here and there. He says, oh, okay, because he was wondering, okay, I'm telling him how to hit. He don't know who the hell I was. I'm telling him, this is what you have to do. So I guess the next day, he gave me he shrugged me off like okay, yeah. And that was it. He gone. So the next day, I come into the locker room early in the morning. I got a cup of coffee. I'm sitting in the coach's room, and I come out for some reason, and I see him, and he says, hey, Ellis, hey, man, I looked at your numbers. I was like, holy shit. I had no idea, man. I'm sorry. I was like, what are you sorry about? He says, You know, I knew what he meant when he
Yeah.
walked away from me the day before, but I didn't. I played it off as if I didn't know what you were talking about. You know, so he's like, "Oh, yeah." So he was eager at that point to listen. You know, and a lot of times that's what kids nowadays. Who are you to tell me?
Mm-hmm.
You know, what kind of numbers have you gotten? You know, that kind of stuff. So it's a little tough.
Would that be something that 22-year-old Ellis Burks would have thought too when he was in a cage? You know, if someone was telling you, or were you just open to?
Oh no, I was like a sponge.
Okay.
I wanted to absorb all of that because as a rookie, no, I was one of those guys. I was ears open. I was listening to everybody. You know, Wade Boggs, who was just a hitting machine at the time. I was wondering, what makes this guy so good? Well, he's hitting 340, 330 every year, 195 to 200 hits every year. And I saw him work with Walt Reniak. You know, seeing the ball out of the pitcher's hand all the way to the bat, head down, right there, pow. The ball's gone, but his head is still there. He overemphasized that as far as head down through. Don't even watch the ball flight and batting practice. Who cares where the ball goes in BP is what he said. Mm-hmm. Your job is to see the ball, contact, hit it, get ready for the next pitch. I don't care. BP, I can hit 20 home runs, Wade Boggs said, which he could. The guy had power. And that taught me a lot. And then, you know, the knowledge of Jim Rice and Dave Henderson helping me out in the outfield, you know, telling me, okay, you play this guy. You never want to play straight up because that pitcher's going to block you. You might get a bad jump on the ball, play a little bit off to right center or a little bit off to left center, you know. And he says, just give me a look and I'll direct you which way for each guy. And he says, when they get behind in the counts, okay, you fade a little bit the opposite way. When they're ahead in the counts, 2-0, 3-1, something like that, give them a step to the pull side because that's a hitter's count. That made me think about different stuff. So I was always thinking because these guys taught me that. So no, I was always a sponge.
And being open-minded like that, what was the best advice you think you ever got during your time? Or is there anything that ever just stuck with you when someone said it that, you know, just really, whether it was Jim or someone else?
Rupert Jones. We were playing the Angels one night. And Rupert Jones, I had struck out like 2 or 3 times in the game. And that last time I struck out, I took the ball right down the middle. And I'm walking back. He's coming back. And he says, he stopped from running out. He said, hey, a swinging bat is a dangerous bat. He said, swing that bat, man. And I'm going to tell you something. He says, look, you got all the tools. He's walking away from you. You got all the tools. You need to play this game the way it's meant to be played. Always hustle. Just ran off the field. That was it. And I took that literally. You know, a swinging bat I'm not trying to walk. If I walked, that pitcher didn't do his job. So, you know, I was up there swinging. But, yeah, Rupert, man, but, you know, you go up there to hit. You don't go up there to walk. I'm a run producer. I'm not trying to get on and increase my on-base percentage.
Well, I think that's a good place. I think I've taken my allotted time. I think we're supposed to be done like 5 minutes ago.
That's
so that's a great place to stop. I wanted to ask, well, real quick.
Go ahead.
Tito as a manager, and also Manny's getting into our Hall of Fame this year. Any good stories between either of those guys?
Man Ramirez?
Yeah, he'll be in our Hall of Fame next month.
Oh, I hope I'm in town. Well, you know, Manny and I played together in Boston. And Manny was always a feared hitter. Mm-hmm. He was, and to be right-handed, and not only to hit the way he did, but hit for an average. That was incredible. And I think, you know, if it wasn't for the what was that stuff called that he was taking?
PEDs?
Yeah, the PEDs. Yeah, he would definitely be a Hall of Famer. But I tell you what, this guy, he didn't take anything too serious. He was one of those players, oh, okay. Like Manny, I mean, he struck out 3 times. Okay, I get him next time. Which is true. I mean, that 4th time up, pow, he hit a home run. He didn't let he was like, you know how they always say the water falls off a duck's back, just slides off. He never let nothing bother him. And people talked about his defense. No. Manny worked his butt off every day. He would be out there before BP, the coach is right there behind second base with the screen behind him, hitting Manny balls off the wall, balls running to his left, to his right, working on stuff. And he became a great defensive player. Always a great hitter, great defensive player. But Manny was a workaholic. People don't realize how he worked to become that great hitter. He was always a good hitter in the minor leagues and once he got to the major, but he worked at it. And that's what made him such a great player. And Terry Francona, I knew Tito when he was managing the Philadelphia Phillies, back in the day, and Brad Mills, he was with them. But I knew those guys way back, and you always knew that Tito was one of those managers that knew how to manage players. That's a gift, because you have 25 different personalities. You have to not only know their personality, but you have to know how to approach them, what to say to each guy. Because some guys, if you say the wrong thing, they can go into their little shell. They're done, But Tito knows how to talk to the guys, know how to bring the best out of you. He had one rule: his door is always open. You have any kind of issues, any kind of problems, you come talk to him. You don't have to talk to the media about it, because the media blow that out of proportion. Come talk to me. And that was true. His door was always open to anyone. And that's all you want as a player, is to have that respect from your manager, treat you like a man, like you are. He did that, and he does that to today. And that's why he's been so successful, because if you think about it, he's been on some great teams to get there. He's been on some average teams that they got there also. See, a lot of players, a lot of coaches, a lot of managers can't get the best out of their players. I've only been around two managers that really can bring the best out of their players. And Tito is one and Dusty Baker's the other. That's because they have that type of relationship. They played the game, but they didn't forget the game. Right. They know how to manage each one of those guys. And that's what I appreciate about Terry Francona.
Well, I think he's outside waiting to get you out of here for your next stop. But
that's all good.
Thanks again for that. That was awesome.
You've been listening to Cleveland's Team, a baseball history podcast with Guardians team historian Jeremy Fedor.